Welcome to the Fraudian Slip podcast by the Identity Theft Resource Center, where we peel back the layers of the latest scams, fraud, and identity threats. I'm James Lee, president of the ITRC, and you may notice something different. We have finally decided to join the rest of the podcast world and turn on our cameras. And you can see me and our guest, Cliff Steinhauer of the National Cybersecurity Alliance, one of the ITRC's major partners. You can't move around the internet or social media these days or really engage in commerce of any kind without running into artificial intelligence. It's only been 3 years since we first heard of ChatGPT, and that launched the era of generative AI, and now we're rapidly moving into the next phase of agentic AI. But like so many technologies, AI is agnostic. How it's used determines if it is a net positive or a net negative. So today, Cliff, we're going to talk about all of that. But to get started, tell everybody a little bit about the National Cybersecurity Alliance.
Sure, James. Thanks for having us today. So, the National Cybersecurity Alliance is the original nonprofit, stood up to help people understand how to keep themselves safe online. So, our website, staysafeonline.org, reflects that core mission of awareness and education around being online and combating cyber threats that everyday people face. So we don't really think of ourselves as getting online anymore. Online is essentially just life right now. Whether you're looking at a smartwatch or your phone or obviously a computer, any kind of internet connected device, we're pretty much online 24 by 7 right now. So, staying safe online is really just staying safe all the time. So we're co-founders of Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Every October, we celebrate the month of making sure people are staying up to date on current cyber threats, scams. And then the rest of the year, we have several other initiatives and campaigns really designed to educate the public about what they need to know in terms of cyber threats and online scams and all the things going on. And we target those towards different audiences, so that they're easily consumed and relevant for the individual person.
So, in other words, you're really busy these days
We
because
are
there's,
very busy these days. We're just trying to keep up and trying to help everybody else out there keep up as well.
you know, around here on this podcast and our other podcasts, and really just our general outreach at the ITRC for years, we have been talking about the sort of the evolution of identity crime. So when we started with it in 1999, when the ITRC was formed, identity theft was stealing paper generally. Dumpster diving was a big thing, and you had compromises of your information because people would look over your shoulder or they would pick up something off your desk. I mean, it was very much an analog crime, and we've chronicled that shift to where we went from identity theft to identity fraud, which is theft is when you steal the information, fraud is when you use it. And now we're in this era of scams where it's sort of a combination of the both. You use the stolen data to commit some form of fraud to steal more data or to steal other kinds of information that can be used in additional crimes. So we've seen scams really pick up they've always been around, but they've really accelerated over the last 4 or 5 years. And then here comes AI. And that has fundamentally changed the success rate of scams. So I know you guys look at this as well. So what are you seeing when it comes to just how successful scams are these days compared to what we've seen historically?
100%. We are having to rethink how we describe what to look for with scams and social engineering, right? So scams and social engineering are simply attacks on humans. They're ways that bad guys are trying to trick us into sending money or giving up information that we wouldn't normally want to give up. And so historically, that has looked, like poorly written emails with obvious red flags and, fake invoices and things that, if you're really not paying attention or you wouldn't have any idea about that possibility of them not being real, you might fall for them. So we've really been driving awareness of those, what to look for, what the red flags are. And those historical red flags are changing. A lot of them are going away. So you're no longer seeing bad grammar. You're no longer seeing spelling mistakes or kind of obvious, language barriers in those communications anymore. They look and feel just like the real thing. AI has completely eliminated the technical requirements, the language barriers, the ability to write a well-crafted, convincing email is absolutely just limited to a prompt and your imagination. So the bad guys are now using, what we would consider weapons grade
Hmm.
AI tools to socially engineer people into giving up information or access or money. So we can't really say anymore, oh, just look for misspellings or the generic readings or any kind of those things. What we have to focus on now are the intent, the motivations of the attackers, and the ways that they're exploiting human psychology and what it actually makes you feel when you see a message, when you're asked to do something or when you get an alert. You really have to slow down and question, why am I seeing this? Who could this be coming from? Was I expecting this? How is it making me feel? So one of the ways I kind of boil that down is, it's no longer about what you see, it's about what you're doing or what you're being asked to do, or it's about how you feel. So when a message gives you some kind of spidey sense or anxiety or pause, those are the red flags now. So they're red flags that you feel versus red flags that you might see.
Yeah, and we talk about a lot of those same things. In particular, the the even the less sophisticated, and there are a lot of sophisticated cyber criminals, but even the less sophisticated cyber criminals, they're using some sort of sense of urgency in a lot of cases, if not most cases, to try to get you to do something right now. And that's a huge red flag. But we're seeing these highly complex kind of scams where it's not just the one person you would talk to. Now you're dealing with, in theory, multiple people. And a lot of scams, particularly that involve government. Again, it's one of those things. How you say how you feel when somebody says, "Well, I need to have you talk to somebody at the IRS. I need to have you talk to somebody at the FTC," and they hand you off to somebody else that you think is at that government agency. And that's because they have become very, very good at developing these complex kind of scams that ultimately, maybe not immediately, but ultimately, they're going to ask you for money. And along the way, they may have collected more information. They may have collected your social security number. They may have collected a credit card or a debit card or some other kind of information that they can use to impersonate you, as well as take advantage of your own resources that if they ultimately ask for that. We see those kind of scams, unfortunately, fairly frequently. And what has changed over time more than anything else is not just the level of sophistication, but the financial impact and the emotional impact that these scams have on people. Now we are routinely seeing people lose tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And for the first time last year, we saw people saying they had lost more than $1 million. And we're seeing that again this year in these really multi-stage, complex kind of scams. And that is only possible because of what we've seen with the efficiency of artificial intelligence. Is where do we go from here? What happens if with these kind of technologies? Is there more and more the bad guys can do using these tools, or we're kind of in the space where this is the new normal, and maybe we'll see incremental change, but or maybe we'll see some sort of step change. What are you thinking?
I think it's many of those, right? I don't think it's just one or the other. I think we're seeing both a scale change and a scope change, right? So as you mentioned, there are some what we think of as phishing or short smash and grab kind of scams. They're the ones that have a high sense of urgency. They're looking for just one thing, just one login, or just your credit card number, and they're in and out, and you've been scammed in a matter of minutes. Versus the more longer term scams that are highly profitable for bad guys. We're talking romance scams, crypto investment scams, combination of the two of those scams put together. We sometimes call that a pig butchering scam. But these are not short-term, urgent type of scams. They're longer term, and they're a lot more subtle than what we've seen in the past. So, the type of scam isn't necessarily new, but the scale at which the scams are being perpetuated is what has been enabled by artificial intelligence. The ability to come up with playbooks, to do A/B testing, to, really refine the scripts, to study the psychology behind it, and to then scale that down and, make a playbook for the scammers, and then giving them the tools like a highly efficient marketing organization may have, combining that with one-to-one type of communications. And then you turn that in even on itself where, you've got human trafficking victims being forced by the thousands to perpetuate these scams. So not only do you have an army of scammers with an army of AI tools at their disposal, with a highly refined process and a highly refined business model behind it, but you've got that amplified by AI, amplified by, tricking people into coming in and being forced to do these scams. So now you're talking massive scale, massive efficiencies, and, just layering in AI to make all of that more believable, more efficient, and more highly impactful. I mean, I think it has exploded, absolutely. And I think that we're just starting to realize the scale and scope of the problem. And we're looking at, we're in a very high year over year increase in losses from scams. And I think it's just a matter of bringing awareness, bringing enforcement, and really almost like a whole society approach to how big of a problem this really is.
Well, and that's a great point because it really is. It's just something that, I'm not sure that people even need to know the level of sophistication that this has reached to be able to um, develop some personal defenses, but the scope and scale is tremendous. It no longer requires a level of skill that it did even 5 years ago. And we've seen that reflected in everything from not only the types of scams and the sophistication we've just talked about, but the technology itself that underlies all this has gotten easier and easier and easier. It doesn't really require any special skills. You can, if you want to get into the identity crime business, you can do it relatively inexpensively, buy some tools off of the web. You don't even have to go to the dark web to get them, and you can be in business with nothing more than your smartphone. So the ease at which these are committed, and now with AI layered on top of that, the ease it is of making them more believable. It's one of those things where we've always known that most people are vulnerable, but not to the level that they are today. And I'm not sure people also necessarily worry about the ones that are most likely. The things like the deep fake videos or the cheap fake videos and the voice cloning and stuff like that. That's still relatively labor intensive for your average cyber criminal, and there's not a lot of payoff to try to do that because you have to actually have the voice of a person who that's a family member, and you have to go through a lot of other steps to get there, and then you have to probably presume that they have resources, so, which they can do with because they've got mountains of data to sort through to kind of develop a profile of someone that could be a good target. But still, those are small numbers. Those are not big numbers. You're not going to see at scale deep fake, cheap fake voice cloning. But what you can see are a lot of these other kind of mass attacks, um, and that we're seeing with the romance scams, with um, fake websites that can be put up in a matter of minutes, and if they get taken down, they can put up a new one in a matter of minutes, all designed to harvest more information or to get you to give away information like a credit card or a debit card. What do we need to do to tell people that this is not the same world that they thought it was? That it's okay to say no, it's okay to hang up, it's okay to ignore the text, it's okay to ignore the email, it's okay to be rude, in essence, because a lot of people think, well, I'm just trying to be helpful. No, it's okay to say no and hang up the phone without giving away any kind of information or be lured into a conversation where you might wind up giving up something. How do we get people to that point where they are really protecting themselves?
Yeah, I like Rachel Toback's quote, being politely skeptical. Honestly, I tell people not to trust any inbound communications or anything that's served up to them in a feed or a search result. You really have to go find the information on your own through trusted and known channels
Mhm.
because you literally cannot trust any inbound communication whatsoever. It is elementary to spoof a phone number to, you know, produce a deep fake audio or video of somebody. I have experimented with the tools. I have seen how they work, and it is super easy. And I'm going to disagree with you a little bit on the scale of the deepfake scams. I think that right now they might be one-to-one human driven, but it's only a matter of figuring out the right prompts, the right tools to hook up the AI tool to, for it to go do its own reconnaissance, grab its own audio, video samples, put it through the uh, 11 Labs or Higgsfield or whatever the tool is and create that deep fake in a completely automated way and send it off against its targets. AI thrives on data, and there's
Yeah.
a lot of stolen personal information out there. There's a lot of clear social information out there about us, right? And if somebody wanted to steal my likeness and create deep fakes of it and target people that I know, despite having private social media profiles and everything like that, I think there's enough public information out there to do that. Even, people who don't think that they have a large online footprint are typically surprised to find
Yeah.
what's visible about them on the internet in terms of audio, video, images. And it doesn't always have to be that good. I think the cheap fake concept is one that when you combine that with a sense of urgency, an emergency at the right time in the right place, in context, which AI is soon going to be able to do by
Yeah.
studying your social posts. They know you're going on a trip, they know you're remodeling your house, they know you're selling your house or you bought a car or whatever it is. All this data about us online is consumable by artificial intelligence. And I really do think that we're going to see a tidal wave of deep fake, realistic looking phishing scams coming to us in ways that we just have not seen before. And to answer your question about what do we need to do to warn people is we need to do things like what we're doing right now, getting on the horn, getting on podcasts, videos, media, the news, wherever we can, we need to be talking about what's coming and what people need to know and what they need to look out for. Because the scope and the scale is accelerating. And I don't see enough defensive technical tools coming out that are going to be able to slow this down in the short term. I think it's really an awareness and education game at this point.
Yeah. One of my buddies in the cybersecurity world refers to where we are now is it's coding at the speed of thought.
Hmm.
So you're creating, maybe you may be creating something for good, but there's somebody else creating something for bad, and it literally is as fast as you can think of it, and it comes out of your fingers into some sort of a prompt. There's going to be an output of that that can be used or abused either way,
Yep.
and that's only going to accelerate. And the the defenders are at real disadvantages. Um, today because the tools that we have used historically aren't fit for this purpose. Because
Right.
most cybersecurity tools today are, they guess. Well, that's probably an attack. We don't
Hmm.
have a lot of deterministic tools to say, yep,
Hmm.
that is an attack. Um, which is a precious little comfort to anybody who's listening to this, especially if you're not only as an individual, but as a small business or even a larger business. You're in this, you are, caught in the middle of all of this. You're in the crossfire
Yeah.
between the people who have what the bad guys want and the bad guys themselves. So how do we think that we're going to be able to use AI to essentially fight fire with fire? Are we going to be able to create tools that through because of entering into this era of agentic where it can a security tool using that is based on AI can adapt on the fly? Is that the solution, or are there other things that we need to be looking for at a scale that even small businesses can use to protect themselves, their customers, as this fight around AI continues?
Yeah, I think we're in uh interesting inflection point right now, right? Like we've got these tools like Mythos and Project Glasswing coming out from companies like Anthropic and similar tools from OpenAI and other vendors that are being placed in the hands of some of the largest organizations in the world, to find and fix software bugs and vulnerabilities. So at least we're covering that ahead of time. And I think that that needs to continue to happen and continue to flow down. And I actually think the defenders are at a potential advantage from that at this point because it's easy to find a vulnerability. It's harder to exploit it. Not impossible, but it's harder. So there's a little
Yeah.
bit of a window where we can actually come in and proactively start to fix these software vulnerabilities. And that's great. And that needs to filter down from the largest organizations that are some of the pilot participants of the program right now, and flowing down the entire software supply chain and into the small, medium-sized businesses who rely on them, who aren't necessarily coding their own software. They're reliant upon their third parties to do that. But it's definitely something that those businesses need to be asking questions about from their vendors and their vendors' vendors and so on. So that whole software supply chain and vulnerability piece, I'm actually encouraged by what I'm seeing. But with things like Project Glasswing and like you said earlier, identifying 27-year-old vulnerabilities that we're finally going to surface and fix. So I think in the short term, that's a good thing. We're going to be see a lot more patching quicker, starting to filter that down, and hopefully we can do that before the bad guys get the same, tools and capabilities. I think for individuals, for social engineering, for scams and attacks of that nature, we need institutional tools from our internet service providers, our infrastructure, the cell phone companies to start to share information with each other and share those indicators, and plug their AI tools into them so that they can say, hey, this phone number is malicious, this IP address is malicious, this social media profile is malicious, and start to proactively block those before they get to the end users. And the coordination between the software giants of the world is what it's going to take there. And then from an individual standpoint, in addition to educating yourself, I would love to see almost like a personal AI agent assistant that helps you scan through your emails, your text messages, and your phone calls and warn you in real time that this might be a scam. This is some indicators that this could be a scam. This is a brand new email address. This is a hallmark question or a statement that somebody who's doing a scam would make. There are ways to plug in those types of tools, I think, in the near future. We're not quite there yet, but that would be really exciting to see if you could have your own personal kind of defender on the agent side there.
Oh, that would be great. And I do know that, because you mentioned the telecoms, I know of at least one telecom company that does actually offer that now as a paid service. It'd be better if it was a non-paid service. But as those tools evolve, that's probably going to happen, frankly, anyway. And this idea that we can use these same tools to help individuals that are being used at enterprise level. It's always worked before, and there's no reason why it shouldn't work now. That those defensive mechanisms can and should filter down, and they should be easy. The best security is the security you don't even know is there because it's just running. It doesn't require you to know anything or do anything. It's just there doing its job. And if we can get to that level, then things are certainly going to be a lot better for individuals because it just moves too fast. It's been moving too fast for a long time. And for even tech savvy people, it's difficult for them to keep up with this as well. Um, one of
Indeed.
the last things I wanted to talk about was what happens though when you actually do wind up, unfortunately, engaging with one of these professional cyber criminals and you've given them information. Now, we always tell people that, well, first of all, you need to notify, if it involves financial information, you need to notify your bank so they can take whatever protective actions are necessary. And we tell people to freeze their credit. And these days, you know, here very relevant right now, coming off of the cyber attack at Canvas, freeze your children's credit because that is very valuable information. And that's freezing your credit is one of the only tools we have to actually stop anything from happening. Credit monitoring's great. It tells you if something has happened so you can respond accordingly. But freezing your credit stops anyone from being able to open up an account which actually uses your credit. And there are certain other kind of application processes and identity verification processes that can also be stopped by a credit freeze. What other things do you tell folks that if they find themselves in a situation where they have actually given either the bad guys some information or maybe they've loaded something on they clicked on a link and they think it loaded something onto their laptop or desktop. What do you tell folks they should be doing as well if that happens?
Yeah, so responding if you think you've been victimized is a huge piece of it. We have an article on our site. One of our most popular articles is how to know if your computer has a virus, because people are searching, I think I did something, and now how do I know?
Hmm.
Yeah, in addition to what you mentioned about freezing your credit, notifying your banks, and getting that going, I think it's important to really analyze sort of what may have happened. If you're an individual and you think you've clicked on a link and downloaded some malware, um, chances are there's gonna need to be some kind of professional assistance to take a look at your device and remediate any kind of potential malware. It can just be too difficult for most everyday users to figure that out. It could involve, re-imaging your machine or all kinds of different stuff. So, I mean, if you have antivirus software, definitely scanning it like that. But honestly, like there are so many new ways to get in with that don't involve malware that you're going to want to have a professional take a look at
Hmm.
your machine. So that could look like a Geek Squad or, computer repair shop or that kind of thing. Um, if you're lucky enough for it to have happened at work, you have an IT and security team that you need to report that to as soon as possible so that they can start to take a look and remediate any broader effects. In addition to your machine, it could also be affecting other machines on your network. So, notifying, reporting, are super, super important steps there, if you're having this happen at your organization. And then again, if you've given up information like a login or two-factor code, if you still have access to your account, resetting your password is the very first thing you should do. And the second thing you should do is make sure that multi-factor authentication is enabled, so that they cannot use that password to get in. And this can be a little bit of a difficult step, but going and forcing other logins to log out or resetting all of your sessions so that anywhere else you're logged in is signed out, and requires re-logging in. And then really, beyond that, I think it's a willingness to raise your hand and ask for help. So if you've been victimized and you're just not sure what to do yet, you can contact, again, the ITRC. You guys have a call center people can call. There's other organizations out there that you can also contact. Um, contact your internet service provider. They can sometimes be helpful in that case, or just your, you know, friends or family who might be more tech savvy or might be able to give you ideas about what to do. I think there's a huge stigma around falling victim to a kind of a scam or a social engineering.
There
So
is.
people
Yeah.
don't like to talk about it. They don't like to say, "Hey, I got got." But the truth is, it can happen to anybody, and it happens all the time. So,
Yeah.
raising your hand and saying, "Hey, this happened. I think I need some help," and just talking to your network of individuals and figuring out somebody that can help you point you in the right direction.
Yeah. I think I'm contractually obligated at this point to mention passkey, which is another thing that we encourage people to do. If you have to go and reset your passwords, if you have the opportunity to replace that password with a passkey, perfect time to do it because, you stolen and compromised logins and passwords are one of the primary ways that individuals are and organizations get compromised these days. Those passwords and logins are keys to the kingdom in many cases. So replacing with a passkey because passkeys can't be compromised. You will never see the encrypted code, the token. So you couldn't give it away to somebody in a scam if you wanted to, because you'll never see it and have no access to it. And it's never stored on the other side where the account resides. So it can't be stolen in a data breach. So passkeys are very secure, and you as people encounter them more and more, we're seeing great uptake, but we need to see more because with more people using passkeys, ultimately that's going to be a reduction in the number of data breaches and cyber crimes related to credentials. So last commercial announcement there. I know you guys have a lot of information on your website. We have information on our website. And in connection with this, we're also going to have a list of places you can go to seek information about whether or not something is a scam. Some tools, organizations that we're partners with, but also some tools that you can use to determine if that call is fake, if that email is fake, if that text is fake, if you want to use something like that as well. That'll be connected to the transcript for this podcast. Cliff, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, James. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. If you want to learn more about the National Cybersecurity Alliance and the programs Cliff mentioned today, visit staysafeonline.org. It's Stay Safe Online on all one word, .org. If you think you've been the victim of an identity crime or you want to avoid becoming one, you can always speak with an expert ITRC advisor about your identity issues. We're available on the phone. You can chat live on the web. You can text us or send us an email during our normal business hours. Just visit idtheftcenter.org to get started. Be sure to like and share this podcast wherever you listen to us. And join us next week for our sister podcast, The Weekly Breach Breakdown. Until then, thanks for listening.